Now, turning now to the Michigan governor's race. Even though the election is more than a year away, and Stephen and Nolan never want to talk about things that are that far away, some of the candidates already have more than $1 million in their campaign war chests, and that includes Democrats Gretchen Whitmer, Sri Tanador, and Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. On the Republican side, two undeclared candidates are leading in fundraising, Attorney General Bill Schuette and Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley. But will money make a difference in this race? All right, so the last time we talked, Mark Bernstein was still in the race. He has since bowed out and said after thinking a lot about it, he is not going to be running for the Democrat side and put his support behind Gretchen Whitmer. What kind of change does that make now for the Democrats? And Nolan, you wrote a column saying, well, Democrats seem to have landed on this is Whitmer's what they've got.
Yeah, I don't see anybody else. Nobody can think of another name who might come up. What's interesting on that side is I don't think I've ever seen two what you would consider unknown candidates or minor candidates come up with that sort of money, this sort of resources this early. You wouldn't think they could make a strong challenge just based on the fact that nobody's much heard of them. But money goes a long way in building name recognition. I'll be interested to see how they use those funds and what sort of difference they make in this race.
How could they use those funds for I mean, but you would have to be, what, $8 million campaign to put your name on every billboard around the state of Michigan repeatedly?
That would cost, but I mean, money is exposure, it's opportunity, especially this early. And if you look at a candidate like Abdul El-Sayed, who I think is one of the more interesting candidates for a lot of reasons, but was made more interesting by the fact that he was able to raise this much money. I mean, this is somebody who's not been in the race that long, has been really working hard to get his name out there, and apparently people are responding. That money helps you do that, you know, and build on that name recognition. I wouldn't be surprised, given what I know about him, if the field doesn't change. If he were to give Gretchen a real run.
The Bernie people apparently love him and are building support behind him.
He's a really smart guy.
That's become a very important wing of the Democratic Party. Now the other fellow, Tanador.
Sri Tanador, he put in $3 million of his own money into his campaign.
No other candidate on either side has that kind of a war chest. So, you know, what's he going to do with it? Will it make a difference? I don't know, but I think that primary is going to be perhaps more interesting than we expect, just because of the money being raised by these two, you know, at this point, unknown candidates.
So what can it really, I asked Stephen, you know, what can it really buy you? And you said exposure and, you know.
Well, organization. They can hire, you know, they can hire professionals and they can do, you know, what a big campaign does. They can do direct mail, you know, they can get on the television, they can get on radio. On the Republican side, though, we had, I think, an interesting development this past weekend when Pat Kobach, the senator from Canton, got in the race. And, you know, this is a guy the Tea Party loves. He's a true blue conservative, you know, from the far right. I think if he is in, I think that he can pull enough votes away from Bill Schuette to really give Brian Calley a boost if Calley gets in and runs an effective campaign.
And when do you expect to hear from either of those two, from Brian Calley or Bill Schuette? What, I guess, are they waiting for when you see other candidates like this out there and able to raise the kind of money that they are?
Well, I don't think, I've continued to believe that Brian Calley's not waiting for anything. I don't think he's running next year. Nolan, I know you still believe he might.
I think he might. I'm not sure he will.
Yeah. I don't know what you're waiting for at this point. I think you do have to start getting out there and raising money. Look at the head start that some of these folks have.
So what will change, for example, if Schuette announces his candidacy? How will his presence? I mean, he's been running. He's
already out.
So I mean, that would. I think if when he announces, everybody say, "Well, wait a minute. I thought he was running."
I thought you were.
I mean, Calley's a different story because there's still that air of mystery of whether he will or whether he won't, and I think he's got to get in by Labor Day or make some definitive.
And do you think the same? Do you think the same thing for Bill Schuette, that Labor Day is going to be around the magic time?
I think he will. Although for Schuette,
typically when you do it,
the Republicans have their biannual convention on Mackinac on the 23rd of September. You don't want to go in there undeclared. If you're going to be a candidate, you've got to declare by that point. That's true of the Senate race too.
Yeah, I also wouldn't assume this Democratic field is set. I mean, I think there are a couple of big names out there who understand the challenge that Gretchen Whitmer would have in the general if she were to get the nomination, and I don't want to see Democrats have spoiled probably the best electoral opportunity they've had in several decades to win the governor.
Well, that kind of lends me. That kind of lends
me
me
to
Gary
my Peters is somebody who could jump in. I don't know that he has said definitively that he will not do it.
I don't think he'd give up a Senate seat to run against Bill Schuette for governor. I think.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough.
Why would he want to do that?
Well,
when you had someone like Dan Kildee, who arguably has good name recognition and
not as good as Gary Peters.
No, of course.
No, not as good as Gary Peters because he hasn't won a statewide race like that. But if he wouldn't give up something like that, why would Gary Peters give up a Senate seat?
I mean, I think that's something, the executive role has always appealed to Gary. I think he's somebody who's immensely qualified for that role. I think he'd be a strong candidate in that race. I think he would be probably the only person who you can imagine really challenging Schuette, who I think is a really strong candidate for that race in the general.
Well, if he's going to do it, I mean, if that's his ambition, this is the year to do it because,
you're not going to wait.
We've talked about this before. In Michigan, one party rarely succeeds itself in the governor's office, and, it would seem to be the Democrats' cycle, their turn.
But they could blow it.
Well, they always can do that. But, if 2008, I believe, is shaping up for a big Democratic year. So
18. Yeah.
18, right, 2018. If he's going to do it, this would be the time.
Not just a party flip, too, but what do you think the key issues are going to be that the Democrats should be concentrating on should they want to take?
Well, they'll ride Flint incessantly. The failures of this governor in terms of his investment in cities, which ties it to Flint, the inability to get the economy going in a way that everybody feels it, the same things that they were trying to make a big issue in the last election when Mark Schauer was challenging Rick Snyder. I mean, I think this is a governor who's left a pretty wide berth of opportunity for Democrats to say, we could do it different.
But don't you think, Nolan, that maybe the Republicans, if you look at Bill Schuette and Brian Calley, should they both get into it, Brian Calley could say, well, look, I was in Flint then for the next year after that and tried to help with the rebuild, and Bill Schuette saying, I was going back and trying to hold people accountable for what happened.
Yeah, I mean, and that's been the point of all this, I think. But I don't think the Republicans are going to be talking as much about Flint as the Democrats are. I think they'll have those answers you're talking about.
Talk about balancing budget.
I think if you're Brian Calley, you're talking about, look where we were 8 years ago when this team came in, and look where we are now. He's going to run on the record. Schuette's been so much running away from Snyder. I don't know how he capitalizes on the really strong recovery Michigan has had. So I think he's going to be turning to other issues, and I think, just as Steve said, he'd be talking, or you said he'll be talking about, I was fearless, I went after my own party, I'm not a partisan,
Right. So we didn't talk about the other big name that could pop out of the Democrats, Jeffrey Feiger. Is that a possibility? And it was funny. I was a reporter in Flint when he ran the first time, and I remember the day that he presented his budget, what he think that he could do, and that's kind of when things just started to fall apart a little bit. The wheels fell off the bus.
I don't suspect he's eyeing this race so much as if he's eyeing anything, eyeing 2020. At the national level. I mean, he ran for this once before, sure. In his little commercials now, you see this little Feiger 2020 thing showing up. I mean, he's not. I don't think he's.
Well, you think he run for what?
I think he run for president.
I
think that's what Jeffrey thinks he should be doing, right?
Yeah, but don't you have to take some baby steps before you?
Oh no! Donald Trump didn't take any baby steps.
I would love to see a ballot when you go in next year with Kid Rock and Jeffrey Feiger.
That's right.
That's when you go in and you just start writing big spiral marks on your ballot and saying, "Where are we?"
Just throw it in the trash.
We're living in an alternate universe.
I'm not participating in this anymore.
All right. Well, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch and talk about in the next coming months.